Ah, hey there. It seems you've caught me at a bad time. I'm a bit trapped here, but never fear. I think I figured out a 10,000 IQ escape plan that will work perfectly. You see, I can use this screwdriver blade to pry loose this priceless gemstone, and then if I use some sandpaper on it, yeah, look, I can create a key that will perfectly match the complex lock of this prison cell. Ha! Onwards to freedom! My name is Graeldon. I'm on an impossible journey to review every Steam game in alphabetical order, and today we're playing 100 Doors Escape from Prison. And 100 Doors Escape, Let Me In. And 100 Doors Game, Escape from School. And 100 Doors Escape from Work. Let's begin. If you've got friends, playing through a real-life escape room can be pretty fun. You've got puzzles to solve, riddles to crack, and physical objects to inspect. Usually the rooms are themed and have some story to go along with them to help set the mood, and because you're dealing with the constraints of the real world, most of the puzzles make at least some amount of logical sense. So, let's throw the majority of that out the window and dive into 4 escape room style games today, all of which are brought to us by Pixel, the makers of fine games such as Coloring Book for Adults, Dominant Mind, and Zeus vs. Monsters, math game for kids. Quality stuff. Our first game today, 100 Doors Escape from Prison, released in June 2022, manages to stand out from the crowd of their other games though, because it features the likeness of Instagram star, influencer, and model Baron Guni as the main character. Now, it might just be because I'm older than I'd like to admit, but I had no idea who Baron was and had to do some Googling to find out. Hopefully I'm not alone with this. Turns out, Baron is reasonably famous, especially in Turkey, where she earned the nickname Plastic Barbie, as a result of both her appearance and the number of surgeries it took to achieve said result. I'll admit that I was initially a bit suspicious of Pixel. Had they really properly contracted and licensed the use of Baron's likeness for a simple escape room style game? So I reached out via email, and to my pleasant surprise, they responded and confirmed that yes, everything is above board with using Baron as a character. Good stuff, devs. I apologize for misjudging you. Don't make me retract that later. Right, let's look at the actual game, shall we? The game begins with a short cutscene featuring Baron standing outside of a prison, recording a vlog-style clip where she openly admits to attempting to break into a high-security prison as part of a quote-unquote top-secret mission for a TV channel, which is definitely something that TV stations send reporters on. One week you're doing the weather, the next it's breaking into prisons. She then finds and opens a conveniently unguarded door and is immediately dragged in and knocked unconscious. Ridiculousness of the scenario aside, the opening cutscene is nicely detailed and animated, although some of the movements are perhaps overly exaggerated. Evidently, they only had enough budget for one of these scenes though, as this style is never used again, not even in the ending cutscene. The tutorial section begins with a short conversational cutscene, and we'll see these scattered throughout the game as a way to drip feed the plot, and it's worth mentioning that all of these are voice acted, which was a pleasant surprise. That said, I'm not sure who the voice actors are, as the credits only list someone for sound, and Baron Guni is only credited for the character model, not for providing the voice. Whoever the voice actor is for Baron, they did a pretty decent job. However, the voice acting for some of the additional characters is pretty questionable. Questionable enough to make me wonder if they might be AI voices, hence the lack of voice actor entries in the credits. Oh, and in case you were wondering, no, the opening cutscene didn't have any voice acting, only the in-game cutscenes do. Weird choice, but alright. So, how does the game work? On the right hand side is your inventory of collected items, which are restricted to being used in the room you are currently solving. There's no backtracking or taking items between rooms. Each room is meant to be solved in isolation, using only the objects from within that room. In the bottom left you have a menu button, and we'll explore that shortly because we can't actually click anywhere other than where the tutorial wants us to right now. So sure, let's see some actual gameplay, shall we? Basically, you click on objects on the screen to find something that can either be collected or interacted with. Starting out with a simple puzzle, we slide the jacket to the left and then collect a key. No prizes for guessing that the key will unlock the door, but you do also need to click on the open door to finish the level. At the end of each round, you get a point screen, and the number of points you receive is based on how quickly you solve the room, with 1000 being the highest possible score. These points don't really do anything, but they do contribute to your ranking on the global leaderboard. While we're here though, I'd like to point out something odd that you may have noticed if you have sharp eyes. It's subtle, but Baron's outfit is different in each different type of scene. In the opening cutscene, you can see a lowish cut top. In the conversation cutscene, it looks more like a latex catsuit with a prominent zipper down the middle of the front. And in the point tally screen, it's a similar style catsuit, but it looks more like cloth than latex, and it has a collar. While this may seem relatively minor, this is, well, weird. It feels like either they had different artists working on different sections of the game, or they simply created a bunch of assets at the beginning and just dropped them into different scenes without checking them too closely. Or, because sometimes the simple answer is the correct one, perhaps these were generated with the assistance of AI, which would explain the subtle differences. As far as I can tell, she does have the correct number of fingers in each pose though, so perhaps it's not the case after all, and this is just something that slipped past their QC team. Anyway, we've finished the first level, so let's now check the options, and nope, we're still in a tutorial. This one shows more examples of how to interact with the environment and objects in the inventory, but is otherwise the same. Use the code on the paper to open the safe, grab the key, and off you go. So now we've finished the tutorial. Wonderful. And of course the image for the achievement shows Baron in the same pose, but a different outfit. Lovely. Good to know you've paid attention to the details in a game that is literally about paying attention to the details. At the start of level 3, there is some brief opening dialogue, and then the mission screen automatically opens. These are mini missions that recharge after a short duration, and they are easily completed alongside normal gameplay. Once completed, you can click the collect button and, as is normal for this channel, you get nothing. As far as I can tell, this is a reward mechanic for the mobile version of the game, and while the mechanic is still present in the PC version, completing missions rewards you with absolutely nothing, making it completely and utterly pointless. I can now also access the options menu, which is kind of weird. From within a level, you can only turn sound and music off, and I appreciate that there are separate buttons for this. If you want to access the full options, you need to do this from the home screen. But even then, the only other things you can do from here are turn the story cutscenes on or off, change the language in a screen that's missing a scroll function, so you need to click and drag the menu, view the credits, and reset your progress. Sorry, I keep getting sidetracked, and I did promise some weird puzzle solutions, and well, Pixel certainly started off strong with the first non-tutorial room. Use a wooden flute to blow air onto ants to make a key safe to grab in a timed sniper-style minigame. Pretty sure that's a new sentence. Anyway, we've seen all the mechanics now, and while most levels follow the same format, there are some that introduce mini-games as a way of shaking up the gameplay and extending the runtime of some of the levels. Examples include placing wires in the correct positions, playing Spot the Difference, using terrible physics to roll a ball onto a button, placing pipes, or literally playing a sliding puzzle on a knockoff Game & Watch style handheld. I think some credit does need to be given to the devs for the sheer variety in the minigames and puzzles, even if some of them are using questionable logic at best. The moment you use sandpaper to turn a priceless gemstone into a key that perfectly fits a lock, you realize that you just need to turn your brain off and go with it. As we'll see with all 4 games today, these puzzles are usually less about using logic and reasoning to arrive at a destination, but more about trying to click on or combine things in the right order to achieve the next step, whatever that happens to be, because following the chain of steps will eventually result in the right outcome. This means the game is less likely to create those wonderful aha moments where you finally realize something that you've been overlooking, and more likely to make you groan and think, really? I was supposed to do that? And now I'd like you to take a moment to appreciate the loss of the 4 hours of my life that went into beating this game. But while you do, here's some other interesting info. For a game called 100 Doors, and with each puzzle ending with a player opening a door, you'd expect this game to have 100 puzzles. And you'd be wrong. It actually has 150. Now, you might be thinking that 4 hours for 150 levels seems decently fast, as it's basically one level every 1.6 minutes. Well, this is possible because of how the hint system works in the game. There are 2 types of help available, the first being the expected hint system that will point you towards the next object you should interact with. It's generally pretty good and has a short cooldown, but sometimes it gets confused and points towards things that have already been collected, and other times it spoils things by outright giving you the answer without giving you the satisfaction of understanding why. The second type of help available is a skip. Using this, we'll literally skip the current level completely and award a score of 0. It takes about twice as long to recharge as the hint does, and you might think that it should really only be used as a last resort, and you'd be wrong again. Because the game actively encourages using skips. There are in-game missions and even Steam achievements that can only be unlocked by skipping levels. So once I figured that out, you bet that I skipped levels basically as often as I could, which was on average every second or third one. As someone who's attempting to beat, not 100% complete games, this was a delightful discovery that alleviated a lot of the anticipated tedium on the horizon. Gameplay continued in this fashion until eventually Baron managed to gather all of the evidence that she needed for the case, escape the prison, and then, well, the cutscene says she told her story to the world, but not what happens after that. She probably became famous, but I can't help but giggle at how the final scene makes her look like a wannabe presidential candidate that wants to look like she finished her morning run and yet somehow has perfect hair and makeup. Totally relatable. Anyway, let's move on to the second game for today, and then we'll do all the ratings at the very end. These reviews will also get much faster now because, surprise surprise, all of these games are built from the same foundation with very similar mechanics and systems in place. Next up on the chopping block is 100 Doors Escape, Let Me In. With the brighter colour palette and cartoony art style, you'd be correct in thinking that this game might be aimed at a younger audience. This is reinforced by the fact that the main character you're trying to help, now called Larry, is struggling to find an available toilet, and this entire game essentially boils down to one big fart joke. Unlike the first game, there's not even an attempt at a plot here. It's just you, Larry, and whatever insane logical leaps need to be made to unlock the door to the bathroom, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. Firstly, this game was released in March 2024, making it the newest game we're looking at today, and secondly, not even the devs know what the actual name of their game is. In the store listing, the name has a hyphen and only the word me is not capitalized. On the other hand, the actual logo for the game shows it with a colon and only the word let capitalized. I should also mention that the first game had the hyphen after the word doors, whereas this one has the hyphen after the word escape. I know it's nitpicking, but there's just something delightfully silly when not even the devs can agree on what the game is called. Post-recording Grail here, turns out it's even worse. In the trailer for the game, it actually goes by a completely different name, simply titled Let Me Poop. I'm guessing that name was deemed inappropriate and evidently it was changed at some stage, but either it was too late to update the trailer or the devs just completely forgot about it. Anyway, back to the review. The game itself actually begins with the tutorial, no main menu or intro cutscene, just straight into it, so we'll have to take a look at the options and settings later. Much like the first game, the tutorial shows you how to interact with the environment and with objects. For completing the tutorial, you get this lovely splash screen which we will never see again, and thank God for that, because Larry looks very creepy and just a little stoned with his "I'm proud of you, son" double thumbs up. But seriously, the splash screen for finishing every other level looks identical, just without Larry. Apparently we needed more positive reinforcement for completing the first level than we do for level 99. As you might be able to tell, although it has a fresh coat of paint, this game functions mechanically almost exactly the same as the first. The way you interact with things and even the hint and skip system are exactly the same as the first game, but they have removed the need to click on the door after opening it. Larry's urgency must play a role here. And while the game is visually pretty decent looking with a consistent art style and level of detail, the limited number of music tracks and annoyingly consistent fart sound effects become grating rather quickly. That said, this game is also available on mobile, so perhaps playing it in short bursts or with the sound off is the better way to experience this game. Speaking of turning the sound off, here's the options menu that you've all been waiting for. Once again, we have toggles for music and sound effects, and the language settings screen is completely missing a scroll bar to indicate that there are more choices than initially shown. I also spotted that in the credits section under 3D and 2D design, the list of names appears to trail off with an ellipsis. Just saying, if I spent any amount of time working on a game and my name was removed and hidden to save on space, I'd be pretty offended. Hopefully that's just a typo or something, because that feels pretty awful if it's intentional. The other noticeable differences between this game and the first are the presence of other characters in some levels and the scoring system. In the same way that the backgrounds are reused pretty frequently, the other characters such as Barry and the old lady Molly also appear in multiple levels, sometimes back to back. And I don't know about you, but Molly seriously reminds me of the old guy from that one Pixar short about the old guy in the park playing chess against himself, but gender swapped. These characters will usually request an item in exchange for the key or code for the door, which I think actually allowed for some extra creativity in the puzzle designs. Mixed into the actual puzzles are more minigames, which made the final playtime for this game, even with almost every second level being skipped again, just over 4 hours long. And coming back to the aforementioned scoring system, from the main menu you can also check a leaderboard, where you will see that I am somehow in 23rd place worldwide, despite having skipped so many levels. And also without knowing I was scoring points, because unlike the first game, you don't actually see a score when finishing a level. So I'm not exactly sure how it's calculated, but it is. And lastly, you might be wondering if I actually didn't finish the game, considering that the screen shows that I'm on level 148. Weirdly, level 148 is definitely the final level, as when I finished, I got a unique splash screen telling me that I finished all the currently available levels, and a warning that more might be added soon. Oh, and ads for their other games where they apparently forgot to add in the pictures for said games. I guess they weren't expecting anyone to play this far. I'm also not sure why it wasn't 150 levels as it was with Game 1, or why they didn't just stop at 100 levels as the name of the game implies, but oh well, at least I'm done with the stupid fart sound effects. On to the penultimate game for today, 100 Doors game Escape from School. Released in March of 2020, this is the oldest game we'll see today, so it's interesting to see how early on they established some of the key mechanics of this series of games. If we can really call it a series, because now we have a slightly different naming convention again, with the word game being added in between doors and escape, but at least we're somewhat consistent with the use of the hyphen. The logo is once again incorrect though, using games as a plural instead of singular, which says to me that they perhaps originally intended to use 100 Doors games as their naming convention for all of these individual games, but changed their plans immediately after releasing the first one. Or perhaps they simply forgot to add the S into the title of the game in the way that they forgot to add the devs' names in the credits of the previous one. Who knows? To my utter surprise, this game actually starts with a title screen. Wow! How novel, how inspired. We also get an achievement simply for opening the game, and I noticed that we have a custom cursor, but it only appears when hovering over a button, so it keeps changing back and forwards between the default and the big gloved hand, which is kind of distracting and made even worse by the fact that it wasn't cropped correctly. You can see bright lines around the square edges of the cursor PNG, which is a shame because the art pretty much everywhere else in the game is actually quite lovely, with a good level of attention to detail. I do dislike the model for the main character Mia though. It has that weird uncanny valley vibe, probably because of the odd doll-like proportions where her head is wider than the rest of her body. Anyway, the options menu is basically the same as the previous games, but we now have both a high scoreboard, and next to the currency counter in the top left, we have, bouncing enticingly, a daily reward button. Well, we have to click that first, and it brings up a roulette wheel that you can spin once per day to win a prize such as hints, skips, or coins. Coins, of course, are used to purchase hints and skips, so unlike the last two games where they were on a timer, we now have a limited number to use. You do earn more coins by completing levels, but this means I actually have to complete the majority of levels now. That said, I found that on average these puzzles were simpler and I was still able to beat the game in just over 4 hours. Now, while I'm not a huge fan of microtransactions in general, it should be noted that while the previous two games were paid games coming in at $14.50 dues each, this game is actually free to play, making the presence of microtransactions feel more reasonable. And yes, we're going to be using dollary dues now, as I'm back in the land down under where we drive on the left, face deadly wildlife and bushfires on an almost daily basis, and where our fastest internet speeds are what the rest of the world had 10 years ago. Now, before we get into the actual game, take a moment to leave a comment with your guess as to how many levels this game will have. We have 150 in the first game, 148 in the second. Will this game finally have 100? Right. As you may have guessed, this game plays mechanically exactly the same as the other two. Inventory on the right, settings and hint buttons available, and you need to find the correct things in the environment to interact with in the correct order to proceed. We also have the absolute barest threads of a narrative here, with Mia accidentally getting stuck here and needing your help to get out. Apparently, she fell asleep in the library, and when she woke up, everyone was gone. Well, bad news, Mia. We might be in the back rooms because we end up seeing the same rooms over and over and over again. This game does use a mechanic we've not seen before though. Shaking the screen. No, not literally, please don't pick up your monitor and shake it. What you actually need to do is click and drag the mouse rapidly across the screen. This feels pretty weird to do, but again, makes more sense if you imagine using your finger on a touchscreen, because once again, this game is available on mobile. This technique is unfortunately pretty unreliable, as in many cases where I tried to do it, nothing happened, and it's often required to progress. As far as I can tell though, it might just be a skill issue or user error, as I could manage to get it to work after some time. Possibly there is an unexplained requirement for the screen to be fully zoomed out, but that's never explained. You're also never told if the level has something that needs to be shaken loose or not, and it's not used in every level. This often leaves you wondering if you've done it correctly or not, and can make some puzzles confusing because you're not sure if you're just trying to solve it the wrong way, or if you're literally missing pieces of the puzzle because the shaking didn't work. The puzzles themselves are often, but not always, themed around the various subjects you might take in school, such as sports, maths, music, geography, chemistry, biology, history, art, and mechanical engineering. Most of the puzzles are pretty straightforward, but two in particular just rubbed me the wrong way. The first was a puzzle that required you to rearrange a stack of objects so that they're organized from biggest at the bottom to smallest at the top, but you can only move one piece at a time, and you can only put smaller pieces on top of larger pieces. As far as puzzles go, this one isn't exactly anything new, but what annoyed me was that I completed it, but the game didn't register it as done. Why? Well, because you actually have to make the stack on top of the white tile, where it blocks the door. Perfectly logical. The second level I took issue with was one that asks you to enter a number where one digit is for the number of fruits in the level and the other digit is for the number of vegetables. Not only do you need to shake the screen to reveal a hidden pineapple, but you also have a pumpkin, a capsicum/pepper, and some corn, all of which are counted as vegetables despite technically being fruits. Each level completed will not only give you a score, but will also tell you what percentage of players you're in, unless you did super poorly, in which case the game will save you the embarrassment and hide the ranking completely. There are a grand total of, drumroll please Ty, 140 levels to beat, so perhaps the devs need to go back to school and relearn how to count to 100, because so far the level count has been different every single time. All in all, it was a surprisingly solid game, but with some rough edges that can easily be looked past thanks to the $0 price tag. So let's go ahead and move on to our final, definitely not free game for today, 100 Doors Escape from Work. Released in March 2022, we once again have a completely different naming convention at play, using a colon after the word doors instead of a hyphen. This has the unintended result of the game being the last of the 4 in terms of the Steam store listings, but actually being third in terms of the library position because the library ignores punctuation. This game features an older version of Mia, and I love how they've actually made her less colourful than in the previous game to represent how working in the corporate world can literally drain all the fun and colour from your life. Once again, Mia has managed to get herself stuck, so she's lucky we're on hands because she couldn't even get out of the first room, which is solved by doing nothing more than pulling the lever that was conveniently located right next to the door. Completing the level awards us with points, a percentage ranking, and a soulless double thumbs up from Mia because HR instructed her to try and be more supportive of her co-workers. I also noticed that the text for this screen doesn't change size along with the actual UI art, so during the opening and closing animations it actually just spills over the sides. I also love how on one of the early levels I managed to somehow score in the top 0% of players. I have no idea if this means I was blindingly fast or excruciatingly slow, but I'm going to assume that this only appears if you achieve the fastest time. Gameplay wise, as you may have guessed, everything is once again the same as the previous game, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. The rooms are apparently themed after real corporate offices, but there's no indication of what companies they are modelled after, so there's not really any basis to these claims. If you're particularly interested, you can probably do some Google image searching to try and figure it out, but I'm personally not going to go to those lengths. If as a game it's something that you're claiming as a selling point, then I shouldn't need to do extracurricular research to find out what you're referencing. The puzzles themselves range from interesting to outright obtuse, such as this puzzle that requires you to combine ingredients in the right order and amount to make a potion to feed to a panda in order to get them to move so you can grab the key from behind them. In fact, one of the early levels seemed almost impossibly difficult. It's entirely possible I missed something, but essentially you needed to figure out what number each of the symbols represented. Some were given to you through hints around the room, but you then need to solve an equation using symbols you don't know anything about. I ended up using a hint to pass this level, which along with skips are now back on a timer instead of bought with a currency, and suddenly I'd finished the game. This made me do a double take because at this time I'd only been playing for about 30 minutes. So I went and checked the level select and somehow the game had skipped me from level 13 to level 100, completing every level in between. So not only is this game completely broken in terms of progression, it also is the only one of these 4 100 rooms games to actually have 100 levels. So I'm sure you're wondering if I went back through and completed the levels that were skipped over, and the answer is no. Are you kidding? I've already played more than 10 hours of these games. Like an office worker being told by their boss on a Friday that they can go home after lunch, I took this as a sign to finish my journey right then and there. Right, let's get down to business. What we're dealing with is basically the same game 4 times, but with different coats of paint. Yes, there are some differences in terms of the puzzles, but the core mechanics and moment-to-moment gameplay are essentially identical between each game. However, one of the 4 games is free, one of them is pretty broken, one has constant fart sound effects, and the other is relying on sex appeal for clicks. Much like the thumbnail for this video probably does, so I guess glass houses and all that, but if you were to lock me in a room and force me to rate these games in order, here's what I would say. How dare you lock me up? What would your mother think if she knew you were doing this? Have you no shame? And then I would probably comply because you're not really demanding that much from me really. So in first place is 100 Doors game Escape from School, because it's free. No, really, that's it. It's got some decent puzzles, and you don't actually need to spend any money unless your IQ is lower than Mia's, and she needed help pressing the big red button right next to the door. My final rating for this game is shaking the screen back and forth like a maniac, out of 10. It's frustrating at times and probably plays better on mobile, but is a decent time killer if you enjoy puzzles. In second place, 100 Doors Escape from Prison. It's pretty competent and I appreciated the attempt at weaving a narrative into the game, even if it was a bit absurd and leaning heavily on the amnesia trope. It feels like a more quality product, but dragged down by the presence of irrelevant daily tasks to complete. The point system can make it fun for the more competitively minded players though, and increases the longevity of the game. So my final rating for this game is... hold up. What was it? Memory loss out of 10. Time passes a little quicker when playing, but you'll struggle to remember the majority of puzzles you solve. In second last is Irritable Bowel Syndrome the game. It's bright, colourful and childish. Not much else is different compared to the other games, other than that it's simply more annoying unless you turn all the music and sound effects off. I personally like to think that Larry gets fired from every job he has and that Molly is an elderly stalker with attachment issues. It made the whole game much more tolerable, but still left me feeling kinda gross. Final rating is an alien speaking gibberish out of 10. A lot of it is nonsensical, much like some of the puzzle solutions, but you'll be fine if you just smile, nod and carry on. Which brings us nicely to the game that has the honour of last place, and the only thumbs down for being a broken mess. 100 Doors Escape from Work. Even if the level progression weren't completely busted, this game also has the most generic backgrounds, a lack of any kind of storyline, and some of the most convoluted puzzle solutions out of all the games shown in this video. Most people play games to get away from the boredom of work, not to be reminded of it, and when your so-called famous officers have little to no identifying features, the backgrounds end up feeling pretty bland rather than interesting. I was going to award this one a 0% out of 10, but I think a more accurate rating is a needlessly complicated lock that requires 3 keys out of 10. If this was how my office was locked up each night, I think I'd be looking for a new job. Thanks for watching. Welcome to the end of the video. Today's Larry was sponsored by Theo the Cat Guy, Barry was sponsored by Zest, and Molly was sponsored by Azazel. If you'd like to sponsor a Larry, check out the memberships below, because without members, this channel wouldn't be possible. Which is why I want to say thank you to everyone currently supporting the channel, and a massive thank you to Freaky Feline, who has been supporting the channel at the Night of the Holy Grail tier for over a year now. That's all for now, so if you made it this far, here's a sneak peek of the next game, and until next time, take care.